Barcelona had Lionel Messi, the best player in the world, a record-breaking goal scorer, a team built around him, and somehow they still collapsed. In 2013, Messi scored 60 goals. Barcelona's next highest scorer managed just 16. Then Bayern Munich exposed the problem. 7-0 on aggregate. Barcelona weren't just beaten. They were dismantled. One player could no longer carry everything. So Barcelona went looking for help. First, a Brazilian wonder kid, Neymar. Then, a year later, the most controversial striker in world football, Luis Suárez. Individually, all three were already superstars. But together, nobody knew what would happen. Three egos. Three completely different styles. Only one ball. Yet within 2 seasons, they would destroy Europe, complete a historic treble, and become the most feared attacking trio football had ever seen. But before MSN conquered football, Barcelona had to hit rock bottom first. The rebuild began with Neymar. Young, explosive, Brazil's next superstar. Getting older. The team that once controlled Europe suddenly looked vulnerable. Atletico eliminated them from the Champions League. Real Madrid beat them in the Copa del Rey final. Then, on the final day of La Liga, one match against Atletico to save the season. Barcelona drew. For the first time in years, they finished empty-handed. Neymar had shown flashes. Messi was still Messi. But the team was missing a player who could live inside the penalty area. A finisher. And at that summer's World Cup, that exact player made one of the most controversial decisions of his career. He bit Giorgio Chiellini. For most clubs, that's a warning sign. For Barcelona, it was an opportunity. While Luis Suárez was banned from football, Barcelona were already planning to bring him to Camp Nou. 3 of the world's most dangerous attackers about to share the same pitch. Nobody knew if it would work. Suarez arrived under a 4-month ban. He couldn't even play. So Messi and Neymar carried the attack alone while he waited. When Suarez finally debuted at El Clasico that October, Barcelona lost. Then they lost again. 3 superstars. 1 attack. No system. Here's the part that should have been obvious and wasn't, stacking. The fix wasn't another signing. It was Libi themselves. Suarez became the finisher. Neymar attacked in isolation on the left. Could no longer just focus on Messi. Close him down, and Suarez was waiting. Mark Suarez and Neymar had space. For the first time in years, Barcelona didn't need one genius to save them. They had 3. And the goals didn't stop coming. Once it clicked, Barcelona became almost impossible to plan for. The wins kept coming. Then came the Champions League. Manchester City. Then PSG. Then, in May, the rematch nobody had forgotten. Bayern Munich. The same club that had dismantled Barcelona 7-0 2 years earlier. This was supposed to be Barcelona's proof. Messi scored twice. Neymar added another. And Messi's second goal became legend on its own. One movement, Jerome Boateng on the floor, Manuel Neuer beaten. 2 years earlier, this team had been humiliated by this exact opponent. Now they'd ended it. Only the Champions League final stood between MSN and immortality. La Liga was already secured. Then the Copa del Rey, and Messi produced a goal that made no sense, picking the ball up near the touchline against Athletic Bilbao, for defenders around him, twisting through all of them and finding the net anyway. 2 trophies down. 1 game left. Juventus, in Berlin, for the treble. Barcelona struck first through Rakitic. Juventus fought back. Then MSN answered. Suarez scored. Neymar finished it. 3-1. The treble complete. Messi, Neymar, and Suarez had scored 122 goals between them that season. And that was only the beginning. The next season didn't slow MSN down, it revealed something more important about them. Messi picked up an injury that kept him out for 6 weeks. A few years earlier, that alone could have ended Barcelona's season. This time, Neymar and Suarez. At the Bernabéu, without Messi at his best, Barcelona beat Real Madrid 4-0. Suarez scored twice. Neymar scored once. The team that had once lived or died by one play. By the end of that season, Suarez had become unstoppable, La Liga's top scorer and its top provider of assists in the same year. Together, MSN scored 130 goals, more than in a treble-winning season. Individually, the front three had never been more dangerous. But that was also the moment things quietly started to change. The following season began with the same promise. Then came Paris. PSG beat Barcelona 4-0 in the first leg of the Champions League last 16. The tie looked finished. Back at Camp Nou, Barcelona needed a miracle. They scored. Then again. Messi made it 3. PSG pulled one back through Cavani. 3 goals needed, minutes left. Impossible. Then Neymar took the game by the throat. A free kick, goal. A penalty, goal. And in the final seconds, a ball lifted into the box for Sergio Roberto. 6-1. One of the greatest comebacks the game has ever seen. The player at the center of it wasn't Messi. It was Neymar. And that night planted a question in his head that MSN could never fully answer. Why be one of 3 when you could be the one? That was the beginning of the end. MSN was still scoring, but Barcelona were no longer untouchable. Juventus knocked them out of Europe. Real Madrid took the league. Luis Enrique announced he was leaving. And Neymar had a decision in front of him. At Barcelona, he was one of 3 brilliant, but sharing the stage with the 2 greatest attackers of his generation. At PSG, a club with unlimited ambition and unlimited money, he could be the entire project. The face of it. The player everything was built around, with no one bigger standing next to him. In August 2017, PSG activated his release clause. €222 million. The biggest transfer in football history. Overnight, MSN was finished, not because the chemistry had failed, but because one of the 3 had decided he wanted something the trio itself could never give him. In 3 seasons, MSN scored more than 360 goals and won almost everything there was to win. A treble. League titles. Copa del Rey trophies. European domination. But the number that matters most isn't a goal count. It's this: Barcelona went from a team that lived or died on one man's form, to a team that could lose that man for 6 weeks and beat Real Madrid 4-0 anyway. That's what the tactical switch actually built. Not just 3 scorers sharing a pitch, 3 players who made each other, and the team around them, close to undefendable. And that's really the case for why MSN is still the answer when people argue about the greatest attacking trio the game has ever had. It was never just about the goals. Football has seen other front 3s score plenty. What it hasn't seen often is 3 players who somehow made each other better without taking away what made the others special. Messi was the creator and the scorer, the one player who could create a goal out of nothing, or score one himself. Suarez was the finisher, a striker who turned half chances into certainties and made the penalty area feel like his alone. Neymar was the chaos, the one defenders couldn't prepare for, because there was no pattern to prepare for. None of them needed to shrink to fit the other 2. Messi didn't have to stop being Messi. Suarez didn't have to drift wide. Neymar didn't have to play as a passer. They just occupied different roles so completely that defending one of them always opened a door to the other 2. That's the part that made MSN different from almost every great trio before or since. Talent wins you games. Fit like this wins you everything. Maybe that's exactly why it only lasted 3 years. Neymar left to become the most expensive player in history and build his own legacy at PSG. Suarez stayed on, then proved at Atletico Madrid he could still win a title without either of them. Messi eventually left Barcelona too. None of them ever recreated exactly what the three of them had together. We didn't watch three legends meet at the end of their careers. We watched them collide at the exact moment each of them was becoming what they'd eventually be remembered as. Messi already the best in the world, Suarez turning into the most ruthless number 9 in Europe, Neymar chasing the level that could make him football's next king. For a brief window, all three existed on the same pitch, at the same time, at their most dangerous. Berlin. The treble. The Bernabéu. La Remontada. Messi. Suarez. Neymar. MSN.